I wonder what high-level Terran versus Terran is like with the new multiplayer balance patch. Is it just going to be Cyclone Wars? What about the Raven change? We see the Raven all the time in this matchup. Yes, the interference matrix research is relatively cheap, but you need to build a tech lab on your starport and then actually spend the time to finish up the research too. And generally speaking, in the early game of StarCraft, you don't really have a lot of time to play with. Is it still worth going for the early game Raven? What about early game Cheese? Right? We already see an SUV moving across the map right now. What about early game Cheese? Generally speaking, in the past, you could stop that Reaper Hellion aggression by building a Cyclone. But the Cyclone right now, at least when it comes to an individual unit, is not going to be quite as powerful as it once used to be. Alright, we've got ourselves a little bit of shenanigans right here in game number 1 of today's Best-of-3 series, as our red Terran player has decided, I think, to build 2 barracks on the other side of the map. Alright, so spawning right here in the top right-hand corner of a map called Alcyone. Playing with the red Terran SCVs from South Korea, we're looking inside of the main base of GuMiho. His opponent in the opposite corner from France, playing for Team Liquid with the blue Terran pieces, we have none other than Clem. Okay, Clem versus Gumi. Gumi, by the way, has been signing up for basically every single online tournament again, as of the last couple of days, which I always get very excited for. I guess he's having a good time with the new balance changes, where yeah, some players are going to take a little bit of time to adjust. GuMiho usually has a very good grasp on what should be done in situations like the one that we find ourselves in currently. Alright, so Clem has decided to go for a single refinery into a command center on the low ground without any scouting whatsoever. So he's going up against Gumi, definitely known as a bit of a trickster, and he decides to go completely scoutless. Now, you will have a Reaper here eventually, so that's gonna be nice, I suppose. But the thing is, right, knowing the exact timing at which an SCV from your opponent is supposed to come in on a map like this, since he's probably only played a dozen or so games on this map so far, does he recognize that that SCV showed up at a bit of a strange time? At the very least, it seemed a bit odd to me, but does he seem to... Okay, he is gonna check. Yeah, does he seem to realize that something is a little bit wrong? Okay, so he scouted the top section of the map with a Reaper. But yeah, now he sees the Reapers of his opponents in his base as well. At the very least, he sees that it's a double Rex commitment. That grenade helped out Clem more. Or sorry, yeah, GuMiho more than it helped out Clem. This command center on the low ground is in a world of trouble. So what about a Cyclone? Like, you can now build the Cyclone, of course, without a tech lab. So obviously, that's a big change. Is it still worth getting? Do you go straight into a Hellion? How exactly does this early game shenanigans work out? Alright, nice targeting right there by Gumi. He does indeed go for a Cyclone, fair enough. But this aggression is not done yet, and that's loads of SCVs already going down. At the very least, they did get one of the Reapers there, so that's, I guess, something, but this is still a disaster right here for Clem, losing so many workers. He does finish up the bunker eventually. Command center on the low ground is getting a nice little hug as well by those SCVs. But I don't think GuMiho really cares about the CC so much. He just wants to CC as many of these SCVs die. Haha, Loki, you're so funny. Thanks, guys. There's the Cyclone. Oh, looks slow in the early game, doesn't it? Looks like the movement speed... Oh, ooh, you need to be so careful with that unit. The movement speed of the Cyclone is almost the same as a Reaper now. At least it kind of looked like it. But that's so many workers going down. 11 SCVs at this point in the game is massive. In the meantime, there's a command center building on the low ground. We've got ourselves a Cyclone building on the other side of the map too. SCV here for Clem is just idling for a little while. And I think that this is... Hello. A very significant disadvantage right here for Clem. Loading that SCV into the CC as well for a little while. He's now gonna make it into an orbital command to continue playing this one out. But he really doesn't have a whole lot going for him anymore. At this point, he's 10 workers behind the opponent. Okay, that's a strange GG timing, but I don't think I disagree. Besides the changes to the Cyclone as well as the Raven, we also saw an adjustment to the Ghost. I don't think that's very relevant for this matchup. Same for the Hellbat. I don't think we're really gonna see a whole lot of, well, change as far as the Hellbat goes for this matchup. It's specifically now no longer one-shotting Zerglings, but you rarely see the unit in the first place. Maybe the Medevac upgrade when players go all the way up to a Fusion Core can get some use. Since you don't really make that many Medevacs generally in this matchup, you wanna, well, get your Liberator range going anyways, and yeah, you may as well get the energy research. I guess the Caduceus reactor can be quite helpful. The Widowmine change, mostly irrelevant as well. I would say that really the Cyclone and the Raven are going to be the main things to look out for. Now, right here on Hecate, apparently it's going to be Clem who is planning on building a structure right next to this beautiful tree. I mean, I'm not exactly sure how this tree works. It looks like it's rooted all the way down over there. But apparently, I was gonna say at the foot of the tree, but I guess it's at the branch of the tree instead. Kind of looks like a nice tree for climbing, though. Yeah, kind of looks nice. I might accidentally fall and break my neck. Anyways, he's decided to go for a double barracks opener right over here. GuMiho going for a scoutless start, but he did decide to go for a double refinery opener. So it is a little bit different than what Clem did in game number 1 of this series. He's going to be able to get that factory going before he's going to think about a command center. So we'll see a Reaper and then probably a factory very shortly on the back of this. And generally what Terrans do after that is pull a couple of those SCVs out of gas and continue mining as if nothing happened. But of course you get that factory for that early game as safety. But again, how safe is this really? I'm assuming that GuMiho will be going into a Cyclone. But how good is the Cyclone really going to be against Mr. Clem's Reaper control? Clem is ridiculously good when it comes to microing those units. Now, it might be worth noting that this is played on the North American server, so both players will have a little bit of ping. But there's no denying that even with, like, you know, 0.15 seconds of delay or so, maybe a little bit more, 0.8 or 0.18 rather. That would be insane, 0.8, that would be kind of crazy. Now, probably 180 ping or so. These guys are still going to be very formidable when it comes to microing their units, and in general, I think Clem is a better player, yeah, when it comes to controlling and microing his stuff. Cyclone indeed coming up right now. Careful with that Reaper, Gumi. Ooh, that's not the way to do it. He's trying to juke his opponent, but that did not happen. SCV number 2 ends up going down as well. This is a disaster in the making. That was basically the only unit that our player in red had. We have a Reaper still going around trying to get some value here. At least he should be able to kill one, but no. Nice movement there once again by Clem. Okay, so how powerful is this Cyclone truly? Against 3 Reapers or 4 Reapers right now in an SCV? Yeah, not very good, huh? The 1 armor reduction is massive. I was wondering about that. Just like that, we find ourselves on Oceanborn, which is going to be the final game in this Best-of-3 series. This is the map with the giant shadow flying around. Well, not in this natural. The giant shadow flying around. There it is. We'll see it better maybe if these players decide to take a base here. There's a giant shadow of some sort of sea monster flying around only at the bottom of the map. Well, I guess it's not flying, it's swimming around. But you cannot zoom out far enough to be able to actually see it. I found in my own games that I much prefer spawning at the top section of the map so I don't get distracted by the shadow. And yes, I did check. I saw somebody ask this in the comment section of the map overview video that I did a couple of days ago. When you put the game at the absolute lowest graphic settings, the shadow is still there. Yeah, it's a little bit distracting as a player, but it does look pretty. You don't have such a thing at the top section of the map at all. This is a map, by the way, where when units die, they will be floating towards the surface. Yeah, it's always a nice feature, right? Abyssal Reef back in the day was, I think, the very first map. At the very least, the first popular map that introduced that to StarCraft 2, and I always kind of like it. I don't really like it when we have multiple maps where the units float when they die, but it's kind of cool to see the units taking off and just disappearing. Anyhow, double barracks opener here once again from Clem, but this time around, one of the Rexes has been built inside of the main base. So we do have a little bit of a build order variety once again. Yeah, Gumi is going to go for the double start here on the gas geysers, and I guess that means he will be going for a factory. Now, will he make a Cyclone as his very first unit once again? Because that Cyclone in the previous game just got murdered by a bunch of guys with jetpacks and guns. I don't think it's that great of a unit to pump. Maybe it's good later on. I don't know. Maybe if you can pump out 2 at a time. But I really wonder if a Hellion would not just have been a better choice, right? It's a little bit cheaper, and obviously it, well, it's a little bit faster as well. Plus, it doesn't seem to die nearly as quickly because it can actually, well, get away from trouble when the Reapers start chasing it. At least most of the time. Okay, so, double Reaper start right here. Yeah, I think Clem is mostly thinking about doing this defensively for now. But at this point, he must realize that the opponent is not sending any Reapers towards his side of the map, so we are going to be sending them across. Once again, blind Cyclone first right here for Gumi. Then again, though, GuMiho did also lose like 2 SCVs as well as a Reaper before the Cyclone came out. That was very suboptimal. Careful now. Okay, that grenade is nice, I suppose. Second grenade not connecting. We're gonna trade a Reaper for a Reaper. Can we also get the second one? Okay. Probably not, since there's a reinforcing unit right now coming in. He does decide to commit. Okay, he does get it here in the end. There's the corpse. Floating to the surface. In the end, though, the Cyclone is out. Yeah, and in a one-on-one battle, there you go. That Cyclone is going to be able to complete its lock-on with a Reaper relatively easily. Okay. Starport is going to finish up soon. And we have a second Cyclone now coming up as well. I wonder if it's worth going for the shift there at all. To the reactor and start pumping those units out 2 at a time. Like, when are they going to fall off? What about siege tanks? How good are siege tanks against mass Cyclone? I would imagine they're pretty darn good. But when you get the speed boost on the Cyclone, you can jump them. Yeah, probably not ideal. In the meantime, Clem over here is waiting on the low ground. Generally speaking, as soon as these units were out in the previous patch, you would be backing off with your Hellions and with your Reapers. But apparently Clem is hoping that maybe the opponent is going to drive down to the low ground and find the strangest group of Pokemon in the tall grass. Okay, instead he decides to go to the high ground right now. Is this good for Clem? I honestly don't know. Well, there's definitely some micro potential. Nicely done right there by Gumi, picking up the weakened units. Okay. Yeah, we're probably gonna have to repair that Cyclone back up to full. That is a little bit costly, but not quite as expensive as like remaking the unit entirely. In the meantime, okay, looks like we've actually got ourselves a bit of a macro game. In the meantime, on the other side of the map, Clem is gonna go into the reactor over here. We'll probably see a tech lab on a barracks as well in a moment. And now we're gonna be going into, I think that, no? You don't need the tech lab. I thought we were gonna go for a siege tank. I think that's a misclick. That's gotta be a siege tank, no? Maybe not. I'd be very surprised if, well, maybe he's seen something here from his opponent that prompted it, but I think he meant to go. Well, you don't need it. Maybe that's autopilot, right? Maybe that's just something he's been used to. You no longer need the tech lab in order to go for a Cyclone. Okay, well, siege tank on the high ground right now is gonna spoil this early game party. Maybe you can send the units in the main base, fair enough, but this siege tank is gonna shut down most of that aggression at the front. We are gonna bring the units now into the main base. Here we go. Yeah, so he literally just produced one Cyclone and then he switched, right? He switched the structures around to get the factory on the tech lab to produce a Cyclone, and now it's switching over with the barracks to make another tech lab over here. I think now we're gonna at the very least go into that siege tank production, but I don't think some of that was necessary. A lot of it is autopilot, right? So a lot of it in StarCraft 2 is just those mechanics that you've built up over years of playing this game, and pro gamers, they are generally not the fastest to adjust because it's just that muscle memory that you've been using basically automatically for years now. Okay. Yeah, if you can lock on with 2 Cyclones on one of your opponent's Cyclones, that definitely does make the game a little bit better. But this is still a very scary attack right now coming across. Don't lose the medevac. Lock-on range has been reduced from like 15 to like 9? Don't quote me on the exact numbers, but you can see that the maximum range of those Cyclones is not quite as impressive as it once used to be, and that's a gigantic nerf. GuMiho right now just driving his siege tank close to the natural of his opponent, and he's starting to do so much damage. Look at all those corpses floating to the surface of Oceanborn. Eventually, all of these units will get cleaned up, and miraculously, Clem only lost 5 SCVs. That's really not even that bad. Well, if he loses the medevac here, that would kind of suck. Okay, yeah, I think evacuating that bush is the right move. Okay, so in the end, mostly just a wash. Both players ended up trading army. I don't think that's what GuMiho was hoping for, but in the meantime, what he did do at home, which I quite like, is make that third command center right here at the third command center location. We already had a third CC building a little bit earlier for Clem. So on the production tab, and he's going to be able to, well, start mining right around the same time, really, over at the third base spot. Okay, so a nice little macro game here. Looks like indeed we are not going to be playing Mass Cyclone versus Mass Cyclone. But it's still interesting to see how this plays out. Hello? Yeah, you can see that GuMiho is just not quite as fast as somebody like Clem. It's not like he's a slow player by any stretch of the imagination, but at the pro level, you do need that crispness sometimes, right? I think these games also got played, by the way, at like 3 in the morning over in Europe. So I guess over in Korea, that's like 9? I guess GuMiho at this point has been playing all throughout the night, which I have no idea what his sleep schedule is like, but I can imagine that that does not really help you out when it comes to playing this game optimally. Anyways, notice here, by the way, the distinct lack of ravens. Normally at this stage in the game, at least one of the players would be making ravens, probably both. Not quite the case. Liberators here going around, trying their very best to just harass wherever they can, and this is actually a pretty good moment to do so, because there's really not a whole lot of units. Look at Jimmy. Jimmy is using his Stimpaks. Jimmy, no! Okay. Jimmy used his Stimpaks to try and get as close to those Liberators as possible. And in the meantime, Clem is going for a big push on the other side of the map. Is there enough right here for the Terran player in red to defend against this? He's trying to transition towards Terran mech, getting the Infernal Pre-Igniter and all that. Units are pumping out of those factories of GuMiho, but I think there might just be a little bit too much bio. 23 SCVs go down. This location has been broken, and what looked for a moment as a bit of a YOLO move right there from Clem turned out to be a brilliant strategic decision. If it wasn't for the fact that these Liberators here are denying him some mining as well at home. Now the reinforcing Vikings, though, are going to be able to get rid of these Libs, and eventually, GuMiho is going to get shut down really hard. Now, he will be able to finish up the Infernal Pre-Igniter. He did save his Orbital Command as well, and that's all nice. But this is one of those styles where GuMiho is planning to play this a lot more passively. His goal, generally at least with Terran mech, is to max out. And when you cannot take a third base, it's going to take you forever to max out. So, ooh, that's Jimmy's arm. Anyways, when you don't have your third base, it's very difficult to max out. So he's gonna need to secure it, but I think Clem is basically gonna rinse and repeat. Just go for the same move that he just went for and try to overwhelm that army at the third base location one more time. Usually you would have Ravens here, right? But Clem doesn't have any of those. Is he gonna just stim in again? Well, this is a bit of a dangerous stim. A lot of these units very clumped up. Blue Flame Hellions getting a lot of value as well. Yeah, that turned out to be an overextension right there. A lot of siege tanks available right now for our player in red. Those Vikings almost inviting the rest of that Terran army in blue here into the siege tank range. And nice siege up right there by Gumi. Whoa, trying to get that siege tank, and one of the Vikings there sadly does fly a little bit too far forward. But it looks like Mr. GuMiho has secured this base another time. Now, of course, this is not the only angle where GuMiho can be fought. The natural expansion is looking a little bit exposed. I guess that's where the barracks is over here, to give him the heads up that units could be boosting from there. What about over here? Maybe a couple of missile turrets over here on the perimeter in the main would not be a bad call either, but I guess that's currently the job right here of these Vikings. It's also a good idea for these Vikings to not go too far forward. Anyways, 4th Command Center is going to finish up here in a moment for Clem. He's going into the 2-2 research here as well. GuMiho has finished up 1-1. I'm hoping for his sake that he will be starting up some additional upgrades here momentarily, but they are quite expensive, and at this point Clem does still have about a 30 supply lead when it comes to the army size. Is he gonna stim into all of this again, though? I don't know. Okay, well, first order of business is getting rid of that sensor tower. Fair enough. A couple of Blue Flame Hellions thinking about going across the map, but Marauders and a Marine, they were waiting. Planetary Fortress coming up over at the 4th base location. SCVs. Got a Warcraft 3 surround right there on one of those Hellions. Absolute legends. That Hellion could not move, and the Planetary is going to make life easier. A couple siege tanks here on the low ground. That's interesting. Apparently, as long as you have a scan available, you have vision, you can indeed shoot at the gas. But, of course, it's a little bit risky as well. GuMiho is now going to get the first shot in. Oh, actually, no. Vikings a little bit too far back. SCVs, though, scrambling to try and get the repair. Looks like this siege tank in blue is just barely out of range. Clem going to just send everything that he's got towards the other side of the map. Yeah, he does not want the opponent to max out. That's his main goal. If GuMiho maxes out, his army is going to be more powerful. He's going for 2 additional command centers here, by the way, which is kind of funny. Not usually what we see. And he's been trying to secure this map to the best of his abilities. Generally speaking, this more passive play is something that becomes more powerful over time as players figures out they figure out all the nuances of the map. Now look at this sensor tower. Yeah, sensor tower actually slightly mispositioned. It should be just a hair further north. A couple units over here get killed for free. One of the medevacs does, well, become a blip on the radar, and he does notice it, but now he's gonna have to scramble into the main base here. And this drop over here is gonna be very painful to, well, clean up. At the same time, we have Clem pushing over here at the bottom of the map as well. And this is what we call in the business simply a numbers advantage. Clem had more units, he had more troops, and despite the fact that many of his marines got sacrificed, in the end, he overwhelms GuMiho's army. Hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you made it all the way until the very end, make sure you hit that like button down below. I know it's kind of annoying that I ask, but it really does help. So please take the 1 second that it takes to hit the like button. And I hope to see you once again tomorrow for another video.